Holy cow, am I the only one who thinks 2022 is flying by? How are we already at the end of January? We are 1/12 of the way through another new year. I can't even handle it. Honestly, I can't handle how fast it's going. So here's my quick little plug. I have to check in and ask. A couple weeks ago, I posted a podcast episode where we talked about starting your new year off the right way. We talked about protecting your peace, and we talked about finding one habit at a time that you can work on till you feel good about that habit, and then you can stack on another. So I have to ask, for me, I'm working on my routines. I'm working on my morning routine. I'm working on waking up every single day and moving my body so that I can feel good and start my day off the right way. And it's going okay. It's not perfected yet, but as I said last time, every single day is a fresh start. So I just have to ask, what is that one thing you're working towards? And are you still working towards it? And if not, why not? It's okay to ditch something if it's not working for you, but that means it's time to pick something else up. Remember, the things that I'm working towards are being an exceptional wife, minimizing the things that don't bring me joy, not buying things that I don't need, having a 10-minute tidy, finding the positive in every situation. Those are the little things that I am aware of every single day that I'm working towards. So I have to ask you, what are you working towards to be a better version of yourself every single day? Now, with that, this is the Let's Talk Teaching podcast. And today we're talking about recognizing anxiety in students, which is something we maybe don't typically think about, especially if we're someone who doesn't have a lot of anxiety in their life and we're maybe not aware of what it looks like in someone else. For me, I feel like I didn't really grow up with a lot of anxiety, but once I became a teacher, I feel like I started to get some anxious tendencies. And that's something that I had to start working towards too, recognizing anxiety in myself so that I could recognize it in my students. So today we're going to start things out by doing a few minutes of reflection. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If you have paper and a pencil nearby, feel free to grab it. You can use the notes app in your phone. If you're driving or you're at the gym or something like that, just think about these answers in your head and you can always come back later as well. While I ask you these questions, I'm going to give you a quick pause so that you can think it through, but you can always pause this episode as well if you need more time to give you some time to write and really reflect. So here we go. Let's get started. I want you to think about a time that you have felt anxious or overwhelmed. And again, if you can, write this down or make a mental note of it. So let's list a few times that you have felt anxious or overwhelmed in a situation. From there, what caused you to feel anxious? What symptoms or signs did you have of feeling anxious? How did you respond to those feelings? How did you treat the people around you? Did you talk to anyone about the way you were feeling? If you didn't, why didn't you? If you did it help? Why or why not? And when did your anxious feelings go away? I don't want to say feeling anxious is normal because I don't want a normal part of life to feel icky, but I do want you to know that most people do go through a season or a time in their life when they felt anxious or overwhelmed. For me, when I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed, I tend to be a little bit more short with my husband. I actually tend to shut down a little bit. I internalize everything. And more times than not, my coping mechanism is to do something mindless, such as watching TV. When I'm feeling really anxious, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to clean the house. I don't want to go out and about. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to do something mindless. So hearing me say that, thinking about the questions that I just asked you, how do you act? How do you feel? How do you treat the people around you? What do you do to cope? And then with that, let's flip the script a little bit and start brainstorming why our students might have some anxiety. So thinking in your head, what are some reasons that you feel like your students might have anxiety? And then let me share just a few reasons that I've came up with on my own. So for one, I feel like students have anxiety because of their peers. There's friend drama, there's recess drama, there's lunch drama, there's gym class drama, there's bullies, there's loneliness. There is a lot going on this day and age, especially with social media, especially with these young kids being on TikTok and having that feeling that they have to compare themselves or be better than they are, or do something different, or wear something different, or act different. So that is just one way that I feel like students have anxiety. I also feel like students get anxiety from assignments and projects and the tests that they're taking. I feel like we all know what test taking anxiety feels like, but some students have that with every single assignment or having to work with a group in a project, having to complete something, or knowing that they're expected to make something at home and maybe they don't have the means or the materials at home or the environment at home to complete that project. So we really want to pay attention to the assignments that we're assigning and the demographic that we have in our classroom. Sometimes students feel anxiety because of appearance. And when I say sometimes, I feel like it's actually a lot of times. The clothes they're wearing, they might feel anxious because they don't have what's new and trendy. They might feel anxious because their clothes are dirty. They might feel anxious because they didn't have time to wash them. They might feel anxious because they're wearing clothes that are too small for them or clothes that are too big for them because they're hand-me-downs. They might feel anxious because of the way their hair is. Some students get anxious when they get a new haircut because they think their class is going to make fun of them. Some students are anxious because their hair isn't as clean as they would like it because they don't have the means at home to wash their hair, or they don't have shampoo, or they don't have the supplies they need. Some students are anxious about their acne. I mean, me as an adult, I am anxious about my acne every single day. If you have followed my skincare journey, holy moly, the past 12, 13 years of my life and my acne journey have been horrible. So I can totally understand why students would feel anxious about that. They don't want to be made fun of. They don't want to feel like they're dirty in a sense when they're probably trying everything they can to clear that up. Other students get anxious because they're a perfectionist. I have had these students in my classroom, the students who they want everything to be exactly the way it needs to be. They want everything to be perfect. And that can look different in a lot of students. Some students that can cause them to work way harder than they maybe necessarily need to. They're putting in way much more effort than they maybe need to, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I'm just saying sometimes we're like, okay, yep, that's good. You've got it. Whereas other students might be such perfectionists that they're procrastinating perfectionists. I was actually having this conversation with a friend lately. I'm not sure if they're going to be listening to this or not, but I was saying, I'm the kind of person that I want to do things really good and I want to be proud of the work that I'm putting out there. But at the same time, you can't get started if you just don't do it. And so I am someone where I'm just going to put it out there and I'm going to see what happens. I'm not going to go back through and check every single little piece of it because sometimes good enough is pretty good. Whereas this friend that I was talking to was saying she wants everything to be so perfect that she almost doesn't want to get started because she's a procrastinating perfectionist. She's so worried that it's not going to be good enough that she never even gets started. And I think we have a lot of those students in our classrooms as well. Another reason that students could have anxiety is because of their home life. Are they being abused? Are there drugs and alcohol in their environment? Do they have divorced parents that they either have to travel to on the weekends or they don't get to see as often as they would like to? Or it's causing a lot of shuffling between homes? Are their parents back in town or going away on a trip? I know that I recently had a student who there were certain days that it was like, holy cow, what is going on? And finally, I realized every time that parent was going away to go work a span of night shifts, that student was anxious that his dad was going away for so many days in a row. And it just brought on a lot of anxiety and caused the night that he was leaving, to be a wild day in the classroom. Now, thinking about some of those things, if you are starting to realize, okay, I probably have witnessed some anxiety in my students, what are some of the behaviors that have been displayed? Some are probably a little bit easier to notice. Some might be withdrawn, some might be refusal, they might be angry, there might be some avoidance. Whereas some maybe less obvious ones that you maybe don't think about as much are the stomach aches, acting out of control, being irritable, being emotional, being really loud, or being really talkative. That was my student. It was like this student was so loud and so talkative and just had so much to say, but it was because his dad was leaving and he just wanted to feel like he had some attention because his dad was his best friend and he didn't want his dad to go away. The stomach aches one is definitely a big one. I have had students in the past who it's like, why does a student have a stomach ache every single Tuesday before they go to gym class? Oh, because they know when they go to gym, they get in arguments with their peers. And then when they get in arguments with their peers, the gym teacher calls home and then they get home and they get in trouble. So for them, it caused anxiety going to gym class, knowing they were probably going to get in an argument and it was probably going to result in having to call home. Sometimes these issues are a little bit bigger than just going to gym class, especially thinking about some of our older learners, our middle schoolers, our high schoolers. There could be changes in appearance, there could be emotional changes, there could be social changes. It might cause them to be a little bit more sleepy or exhausted because they're spending all night thinking about these things. They might start performing lower in school than they typically do. This might have been your student who at the beginning of the year was hitting all of the targets they needed to, and now suddenly it's like they're falling off and they're not hitting the targets as fast or as quickly as they were before. They might start skipping school more often. Their attendance might start to drop. They might start being late for school. There might be panic attacks that are involved. So when we start seeing these things, we need to be proactive as soon as we possibly can. We need to figure out how we can help them. So with some of these smaller, occasional, situational type of things, we first of all just want to talk with our students, get on their level, connect with them, do those daily check-ins, have lunch together. This kind of goes back to last week when I talked about having that 5-minute check-in with every single one of your students in your classroom. You might not even realize this is going on until you have that check-in with them. But if you've already noticed it, have those check-ins more often, because you need to be the advocate for this student. You need to be the one who is going to be there for them because you're the one who sees them every single day. We want to make sure that we can accommodate for these students. We are legally able to accommodate for all of the students in our classroom. You don't need a special plan. You don't need special permission. Every single student is able to have accommodations. That might mean they need a special testing environment. That might mean that they need to get ready for gym class a little bit earlier. That might mean you might have to send them to lunch after everyone else goes to lunch, because getting into the lunchroom with all of the loud noise just causes so much anxiety for them. Now, of course, before you make these decisions, you need to have those personal conversations with your students. Also, you should call home and make sure the parents, the adults, are okay with these decisions as well. Make sure everyone is on board, but even have those conversations with those adults at home, because maybe you can get a different side of it that you're maybe not recognizing in the classroom as well. We really want to make sure that we're being compassionate, that we're offering empathy. We may not be able to truly understand what they're going through, but that doesn't mean that we can't put ourselves in their shoes and empathize with the situation that they're in. We can help them take deep breaths. If you notice that this student is starting to go into one of their anxious tendencies, let's just pause for a minute. We all feel better when we take some deep breaths. I do this with my students all the time. I have a reel on Instagram about it. If you're looking through it, scroll down quite a ways. I'm wearing a green shirt with a gnome on it. It's a Christmas shirt. I think I posted it a year or two ago, but you breathe in for 8 seconds, then you breathe out for 8 seconds. Breathe in for 10 seconds, breathe out for 10 seconds. Breathe in for 12 seconds, breathe out for 12 seconds. It makes a big difference. You might think I'm crazy. Let's just take time. This is off the cuff right now. We're going to do it together. Whether you're driving, whether you're in your car, you're at the gym, whatever you're doing, we're doing these deep breaths. Stop what you're doing. I mean, if you're on the treadmill, you can keep running, but do these breaths with me. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to count to 8 while you breathe in, and then I'm going to count down from 8 while you breathe out, and the same with 10, and the same with 12. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now breathe in for 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Breathe out for 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, are you ready? Here's our last one. You're going to breathe in for 12 and breathe out for 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so how do you feel? Do you feel a little bit more centered? Do you feel a little bit more calm? This is a big one that works with our students, even just when our class gets a little bit more rowdy, which could cause other students in our classroom to have anxiety. Let's take a minute to pause. Let's take a minute to get them recentered. It makes a big difference, I promise. We can offer these students breaks. We can offer these students some quiet time. We can offer these students time in our cool down corner. Whatever you feel like is going to work best for those students, try it. And if one thing doesn't work, try something else. And what works for a little bit might not work a little bit later, but as long as you're trying something, that's what matters. When it seems like a bigger deal, I mean, we have to remember that we are mandate reporters. We need to document, we need to seek support from our administration, our counselors, our OTs, our SPED program, our psych personnel. We need to make sure that we are reaching out to the people who can help our students because, yes, we're teachers and yes, we do it all. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we have all of the resources and we shouldn't be expected to have all of the resources. Those counselors, those OTs, our SPED department, our psych department, they are trained in different areas that we are not trained in. So let's utilize the tools that they have so that we can meet the needs of our students. As always, too, it's just really important that we contact home. It can be short, it can be brief, it can be objective, but stay in contact with parents. The sooner you build that relationship, the more they're willing to work with you. I know sometimes the anxiety can be because it is a problem that's happening at home. Of course, every situation is a little bit different, but it's important to keep our families involved with what's happening at school as well. Anxiety really does come in many different forms and it can come on at a moment's notice. We don't know when it's going to happen. So we need to be in tune to how our students are acting. If it doesn't seem like them, just talk to them, show them you care, ask them how you can help, take some time. Maybe they're not ready to talk, but maybe you can set up some time to talk with them later. Say, hey, I know you're not quite ready to talk now, but when you get inside from recess, why don't we take just a quick few minutes to chat? Something like that. They might need some space, but continually show them that you are there for them. You are there to help them however you can. So, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, think back to how you felt when you were anxious, how you act when you're anxious, how you've treated people when you were anxious, how you coped when you were anxious. We are all 21 plus. We've all had years of learning how to cope, and yet we still get anxious. And some of our little learners, they just don't know how to channel those feelings. So, as much as it's our job to help them with math and reading and social studies and science, we also need to find ways to help them emotionally as well. So, I really do hope that this podcast today brought a little bit more awareness to you of what our students might be going through when they're feeling anxious, especially if we're not ones who feel a lot of anxiety in our lives. We still need to be in tune to what's going on in our students' lives, really just take time to get to know them, have those one-on-one conversations, show them that we're there for them, and find them the support that they need. If you're going through anything with a student and you just don't know what those next steps should be, as always, reach out to me. I'm not saying I have all of the answers, but what I am saying is I will help you find some answers. So if you need anything at all, at North Dakota Teaching on Instagram, I would love to chat. I would love to help you however I can. And with that, I will see you next week.